Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of an VNture podcast, a podcast dedicated to us discussing the wide world of visual novels. I'm your host, Taros113, along with my co host, MR, and today is a special occasion because we have a guest around, a fellow VN enthusiast, ASid. He's a passionate reviewer who's put up several YouTube reviews up. And so I'd like to give the floor to him. Thank you, ASid.
All right, thank you, Taurus, for the invitation, and thank you, MR. I'm really glad to be here today to discuss with you guys in this podcast. And hi, guys. Yeah, this is ASid here, and well, a bit of introduction. I am 23 years old. I'm from Malaysian, so it's a Southeast Asian country. If you guys don't know, and I'm currently studying in Germany. So I'm in Germany for about 2 years now, and yeah, I just figured that a bit of my free time, I wanted to do some content creation about visual novels because I love visual novels. I'm really passionate about it. I've been reading them for about 10 years now. So yeah, considering that the community is quite small, so I figured that I wanted to do my part in growing it. So yeah, and been doing some videos here and there, and that's what got us here. So yeah, that's all from me.
Yeah, that's very admirable of you. I mean, that's what we're trying to do the same here. We're having a podcast because the VN sphere is so small, so any sort of content creation is super helpful, you know?
And
Exactly, yeah.
and for me, especially nice is to finally have someone to talk on podcast together about one of my favorites. And let's start off by discussing Evenicle. I saw
Yeah, definitely.
I saw you made two reviews pretty much back to back in sequence. I'm not necessarily how much delay was in between of them, but you made them back to back discussing the wonderful world that is Evenicle by Alisoft. And my first and foremost question is, how do you rate when it comes to world building aspect? Because it's hard to deny they have their quirkiness, they have their weirdness, they have their own brand humor. But intertwined with all of that, they always tackle serious topics. I am unsure if you are aware of the Run series, but even in that series, for each and every game in the series, you can isolate a case to be explored. Going back to Evenicle, they use it as a deconstruction of a religious rules, this being a sacred commandments, and poses a question: how would a world look like if two of those were sacred and unbreakable? That means no killing, and that means single partner for life. How would that affect a world? Because in a vacuum, that could create it for the let's say unsuspecting reader, that sounds like utopia, something that is easy to live by in because you have clear rules that cannot be violated. But what happens in reality is far from it. So what's your take on that?
Okay, so first of all, I would like to mention that I haven't read the Rand series yet. I know this might be some might be pissing off some of you Alisoft fans because my first Alisoft game was legit Evenicle, and I loved it completely. And of course, when you're talking about the world building, I think I mentioned it a bit in my review that I said it was like a really interesting kind of a world building because it really did how do you say it? It really approached that fantasy aspect quite well. And I would also say that how is it? How you mean like I've played a lot of this degenerate games,
Fair.
you can say. Degenerate games. So when I first touched VNture, and I was quite interested by it, it didn't really have quite of a strong opening, so it wasn't really a strong book. But the longer you read it, and the more you explore this world building and how the story, how the story like binds them together with the world building, and the fact that you can put in like H stuff, the hentai stuff into the plot, and it makes it like really relevant. So it's just actually very, very surprising, and it was very enjoyable to read. I mean, it's just not something that you would just like, oh, you just read this for the hit stuff. No, it's actually, to me at least, I would think that, oh, this story, how it moves the plot with the hitch scenes involved, as part of the rules that were set inside the universe of VNture. So when I see it, I was immediately appalled when I read it, and when you get introduced to everything. Like, for example, the first rule that you cannot kill anyone, and then the second rule, you can have one partner for life. But as I've mentioned, that there are certain set of people that are how do you say it? Are exempted from that, the knights, and they do their part as well. And if you were to bring it over to the real world, I mean, yeah, this is just a story. It's fiction, so I wouldn't go into it deeply. But in my case, like, when it's okay, let's say that in my case, I'm a Muslim, so when it involves the topic of religion, I don't really care, especially because it's not regarding Islam anyway. But I do see some hints that it's about, maybe it's related a bit to Christian, with the Christianity, with the how do you say it, the statues, the Mother Eve statues resembling her,
symbolism.
Like symbolism, exactly. Something like a, how do you say it, like a like Mother Eve is like, we could say that she's like Jesus or something. And
they use very heavy inspiration from cardinal sins, for example.
Exactly, the cardinal sins with the Pope and all. Yeah, when I see them, it's like, wow, this is actually a really good implementation and all. And it's like the story manages to mix in a lot of different things, like the dragons, other monsters. You use your stuff, like, and it's a bit of science, sci-fi in it. I mean, it's not completely fantasy. It's like, I mean, I did mention that there's TV, so yeah, there's TV in the universe, so it's not all medieval stuff.
And even the form of government is far cry from what was in medieval times. They even mention that something that exists in real life, penal code, does not exist in this world. Why? Because you no longer need that. Your holy commandments that are unbreachable humanizes or dehumanizes citizens. So you no longer need such a code of ethics that you would need in real life. So that's actually very interesting, that is built into the world. The countries themselves and the laws they pass coincides with the biggest idea introduced in the world of Eve. I also remember how, and I'll be probably bringing up your reviews quite a lot, you went ahead with describing characters. And you went with describing all of the main characters and some of the side characters. And your bar to set of introducing character is whether or not they were on the cover of the game. So that was actually a very interesting approach, because for me specifically, whenever I talk about a vehicle, I don't know how far is too far or how little is too little. Because I think there is some part of you as a evangelical enjoyer who would like to preserve that enjoyment for others. Whoever decides and, dare I say, is brave enough to read evangelical, you'd rather have them a fresh experience, not to spoil anything about them. But on the other hand, how would you sell that to them? What is bare enough necessity to recommend such a title? So the question I think I have, do you have any other criteria when it comes to, I like this game, let's try to pass it off to people like-minded as yourself? What goes through your hand when you would like to recommend someone evangelical?
That's a very that's a tough question actually. When I would say that I did think of when I made the video of the review, I was thinking like, how do I get more people to play Avnica? It was, but probably one side aspect is for me to introduce who's the best girl, and that way I could like find like-minded people as well that would like the same girl. But in all honesty, about the other characters is that when I try to introduce these kind of characters, because I did mention that I think in my second Evangelical review that there are other more interesting characters than the one that I introduced, I can just always say it like that because I would leave it to the viewer that to decide. Okay, do I take his word for it, or because I would rather them going in with a blind eye and just experience it fresh rather than me trying to forcefully drag them to play the game. No, I would rather just them, okay, leave to the side. I'm just gonna say that, there are other more characters, but let's say that this particular character is my favorite, but there are more other interesting characters, so I don't want to introduce them because it would spoil your experience in my opinion. So that's why I just that's my point of view from how I would make my videos.
I mean, that makes sense. You try to find your fellow men, as it were, men of culture, and then introduce them via characters. Fair enough. That's a very valid strategy. For me, this is almost always I bring this up. I like subversion of expectations, being in the world, setting, world building, but also characters themselves. And I'm not sure, maybe it's pushing it a little, but I really enjoy a tsundere subversion that they did in Evangelical, even though it might have resulted in a character not getting what she deserved. But that's to this point, this is the best example of subversion of expectation for a tsundere character that is so tsundere again towards a male lead who is such a good boy that he will take her tsundere act as a legit she doesn't like me, and they will not end up together. Very rarely VNs do that, and they went ahead and did so. And to this day, I laughed so hard at that scene, even though by the end, that character got short end of the stick when it comes to her treatment. But Alisoft, as a company, were brave enough to try subvert those kind of tropes and expectations. Because otherwise, some of the characters you met even early game, you were for sure could have bet your money they will have their MC treatment right. Let's just say that. How is that? How do you relate to that kind of expectation subversion, not only on the part of the story, not only on this part of the lore and world building, but also on characters? And is it something that maybe breaches too much in the spoiler territory?
Okay, let's first address that tsundere part. As I've mentioned in both reviews, if I recall correctly, that I liked I like the tactician on both reviews on both games.
Yeah.
The tactician in the first Ivnickel is a Tsundere.
Yeah.
And as I've also mentioned in some of my videos, I hate Tsunderes. I just hate them. I have a thing against them. I have a passion against them. You can say whatever it is. I just hate them.
Fair.
Because they're just not for me. They like to abuse the MC, punch them to the moon or something.
Yeah.
So it's kind of it gets quite annoying. One example is Arisa from the Byaku video that I've done. That is like one very example which I hate. But going back to Ivnickel, the Tsundere Ivnickel, Catherine, if I recall correct name, she is a very interesting Tsundere. Her Tsundere-ness is not over the top. It's medium at best, low to medium, and that's what I like about it, because her Tsundere side is like how do you say it? It's also as you said, the subversion of expectations. Yeah, kind of thing. I expected her to be like, oh fuck, this is like another Tsundere. I just don't like her. But as I've read through the story, continue on and on and on, I loved her.
Yep. I
loved her the most amongst the main party members. And that's the thing about Ivnickel. It is how somehow it plays. It doesn't really goes towards your expectations. You expect something to be like this, but it happens instead. Something else happened instead. Like I also mentioned that I think I covered that part in the Ivnickel 2 video, that you might expect, this guy might be bad, but then you don't know anymore, and then your reaction will be like, oh, what?
Yeah.
And then some surprising moments, scenes like the R word that rhymes with tape one, as I like to mention, and you don't expect him to do that. You don't expect him to do that. You don't expect her to be a part of it. It's what I love about Ivnickel. They just, in terms of making itself as a story that implements hate scenes as a plot, I can't say good enough about it. Yeah, that's what makes it really one of my favorite visual novels, to be honest.
Fair enough. Again, I can't stress enough how much fun I had reading Ivnickel, but unlike what you described, I already had a high expectation going in, having played all the English runs series game that were available at the time of release for Ivnickel 1. So I already had high expectation, and yet they still managed to steal my heart, as it were, even though I played a lot of Alisoft's game, and sad to say, a lot of their non-main, that being runs series, is not that great, or at least doesn't resonate with me.
Oh, you're gonna piss off so many Rance fans here.
Again,
Rance fans are something else, man.
Again, I love all the Rance games, but when it comes to Alisoft, some of the lesser known series just doesn't work for me. But Ivnickel, even with me going with that expectation that most of their spin-offs are not that great, just stole the show.
Speaking of Ivnickel, sorry, ASid, you mentioned you like the characters. What other parts of Ivnickel did you like?
Hate scenes, no doubt.
Oh god.
You gotta ask me that question? Oh, come on. It's just that great. It's because of the fact, as I've said, it's because of the fact that they implement the hate scenes into the plot so well, and you don't get bored of it. You don't get bored of the hate scenes. Like, I can safely say I've read a lot of hate scenes, a lot of New Kike, and I get bored because they're like the same repetiting stuff. So it's just if you get the same thing for a certain amount of time, you get bored of it, right? It's just that's just human nature. So what Evenical does is that it really approaches from a different, I wouldn't say different perspective. It tries to tackle it, tries to put the hate scenes in, but at the same time it doesn't feel forced, and at the same time it also gives it's also surprising. Like, say for example, there are tough scenes with the outward that rhymes with tape. I don't like those scenes. I don't know, up to you guys that they have preferred fetishes, but to me, I don't personally, how do you say it, I'm okay with it because I'm used to it, but I wouldn't go out of my way to search for it. But how they tackle it,
understandable.
How they go into it, how they put the scenes in those tough scenes, I didn't feel disturbed. It felt like, this part of these scenes actually does go well with the story. I mean, it's actually good. So that's one thing. And I also like as Taurus mentioned, one also thing that I like, the MC, because he's not really dumb and dense. He's dumb and dense sometimes, but he's just a simple guy. He just wants to get laid. That's it. He's just a simple guy. He doesn't want to save the world. He just wants to get more wives.
I mean, the premise from the first second is he's a simple guy. He is dumb and dense, but he's proactive about it, and the world is set against him. Okay, he's sad because he has two sisters, but he can marry only one. That's unacceptable. So therefore, he goes on a quest.
Okay, I take back what I said. That is not a good hook. Actually, that first part is a good hook. Because as Emma said, he has two sisters that he wants to marry, but due to the world only allowing one, he has to, work his ass to get new wife slots. So
effort, fight the world.
You have to put in effort, man.
So the premise was such a hilarious tone to it. You just can't bring yourself to hate the game. Even though I want to go back to the incorporation of age content into such a title, and a little build upon the question that Taurus posed. Do you think, ASid, that the scene in questions, I mean the tough scenes, not necessarily H1, but throw them into that, contribute to building overall world and how the atmosphere for the game and how its lovable cast of main character is, that despite the state of the world, despite all the bad things that happens, they try to make the best out of it? And how do you feel about that? How they pretty much separate age scenes into three categories: the wholesome build-up, the tough, bad situations, and let's call it fun bits in the most literal sense, when they are having less so about the activity itself, but they have just so much fun with it. It's not about healing anymore. It's just being fun and quirky about how they approach it. So that's my question to you. How does that incorporate everything else around the title? And would you agree to that?
Since they separated the two tags, I'm completely fine with it. And as I mentioned, it's all good. I would say that those rough scenes, that it does show, because they add like a new perspective towards Evenical for me. It doesn't like getting rid of them just makes Evenical like a generic harem kind of harem game, like so them adding those rough scenes, as you might say, it just like gives off a, how do you say it, like
A vibe?
a wake up call.
Oh, okay.
No, a wake up call. You know, like how the dark side of the world. Like you can say that fun and games, or like the MC and his RM, but then you get to see the dark stuff of this world. Like what does the how does how do the two rules affect the world building, like, and its effect on the characters, on the populace. So yeah, it's kind of nice to see that kind of perspective, like these kind of rough scenes with, or like those that defy the laws, they become outlaws, and then they can just do whatever they want. Yeah, and it just coincides with human desires, you know, the
True.
dark side of humanity. I really like that. So it's if any, in any sense, it just gives you a lesson to learn.
Yeah,
like,
I agree completely.
Yeah. And as I would relate it to like when I first learned in pre-U, when in college. There's this book I read called Lord of the Flies. It's a really good book. I recommend for anyone to read
absolutely.
it. Yeah. So it's a book that focuses on the theme of the dark monsters in our hearts, in a human desire. So I kind of see that, although this Evenicl is not like a dark theme kind of story, but it does have some aspects to it. That those kind of bits and pieces I appreciate.
I see.
Yeah. Which makes the story even better.
Yeah. I want to also ask you about, because this is intriguing to me, in how you approach those two reviews. Coming off from replayed even, the Evenicl 1, you hopped on to the Evenicl 2, and you saw the, how I would say, progression of how they incorporate the laws and how they, I wouldn't say moved past, but showed a little bit more mature world in which outlaws are very much a thing happening for the very long time, and maybe even a little bit unrepresented, as you pointed out correctly in your review. But they pose a different question, or at least in my book, a different hook. Whereas in Evenicl 1, the big question was the hero's journey of banging both sisters, marrying them, okay? And for the second game, at least for me, the hook was why the laws of the world are so similar, yet fundamentally different.
Well, going on to that part, I believe that I think I did mention that a bit in my conclusion of the Evenicl 2 series. Yep. And I also mentioned that in the introduction that the world, Evenicl 1 and Evenicl 2, they're in the same universe, bound by the same laws, just on different planets.
True.
So it's maybe not in the same universe, different universes, but they're like bound by the same laws, which is from Mother Eve. So the laws still works more or less similarly. They're still there, but there are bit tweaks and a bit, tweaks to change just some details, because if you were to make it like the same, it would be boring. Yes. So I don't actually blame Alisoft for trying to debate, although I did mention it was a bit of a problem, because in Evenicl 2 you can just bang everyone.
Yeah.
You can call them as your wives and all, but so that's what
you mentioned that there is so much less of a struggle for Evenicl 2 protagonist to get his hands on a chaseable character, let's say, in comparison to Evenicl 1. So, but again, my point was a little bit more about the hook. For again, comparing Evenicl's 1 hook of funny anime boy chases the career to get both sisters against Evenicl 2 in my opinion, and for me, the hook was more in how they modulated the word, the law of the world, instead of Protag's ambition. So a little bit twist on the formula, even though obviously the Protag had the motivation, but maybe, just maybe, it was too easy of an excuse to get his hands dirty, let's say. And another point that was a bit lost in between those titles that you outlined, and I really like that you mentioned that, because of a focus taken away from the outlaw system, they couldn't introduce another equivalent that could showcase that maybe, just maybe, not all outlaws are bad.
Yeah, that's what I think I did complain about that in Evening
Yes,
2.
you did.
Yeah, because the outlaw system, looking at the outlaws as characters, are really interesting to look at. I mean, less on the bad one, more on the good ones. Because not, as I've said, if you follow the story, well, I don't know if there's spoilers or not, but not all outlaws are bad.
Yeah,
as I did mention. Yeah, if you see these good outlaws, you would say that you find a different perspective in life.
Yes, true.
I don't know if that's a deep statement, but I just see it that way because it's not like you're an outlaw, you must die. No, it's not like that. You can't. It's like in the case of like people in prison.
Yeah,
maybe they did stuff that they didn't do. They were just framed.
Yeah.
Who knows? So
victims of circumstances and world.
Yeah, exactly. So maybe they were forced against their will. So you can't actually discriminate against these outlaws just as bad people. They're gonna ruin the populace and all that. No, that's just but that's what I appreciate about the game. It gives you a different perspective. But what I hate about the game is that that kind of perspective you have to do through a side quest, which most people would miss.
Yeah.
So yeah, exactly. So I hope you guys, if you do play Nickel, and go through a guide to make sure find that side quest, because I missed it on my first part, and yeah, it's really fun that you can find new stuff in the game.
True, I agree. Although I have to say, when it comes to, how can I say, quality of life and treating my time with respect, I have to say Nickel does an amazing job of it. First and foremost, allowing you, if you're thorough enough, to find everything on your first playthrough. Meaning, I mean, holy hell, I'm done with the story, I'm done with the game. But I don't need to reach a true ending to finally see what's happening. Not that it's necessarily bad all the time, but it's very respectful to how a little time I do have for reading such a title. So I really appreciate that. Some of the other quality of life things I was surprised and kinda wish more VNs have it. Progression bar of how much more text is left on this chapter. It makes so much easier to make a exit point. For example, do I feel the conclusion in the air? I can quickly glance at the percentage of chapter done and gauge whether or not something important will happen, or can I just read 5 more minutes and then go to sleep, for example. Such a quality of life was amazing. And I think you even mentioned the ability to customize your own shortcuts in a UI. That blew my head the first time I saw that.
Yeah, that part I immediately found in coincidence in the main menu. I was like,
yeah,
you can do this.
True.
It just surprised you, yeah. It's an RPG. You're like, these small little details is just so nice to have.
And funny enough, they even incorporated the, how can I say, the gameplay part into the UI, meaning unless you have a specific skill, a specific action on your UI will not appear. And wow, that's actually a very immersive thing to think about. They went above and beyond to make it as fun to play, as fun to discover, as fun to mess around with the game system, the same way how fun and exciting the world is. Because a lot of those concepts we have is flipped on its head. For example, do you know what classifies as an insect?
Like the real world definition of an insect?
I mean, that's what you would expect, but not in the world that follows the planar scenario. What means in the world of Eve, insect is everything that does not host a soul. And that's it.
Wow, that's news to me. Is that in the lore or something?
Yes, you are told that in the even first game. You are fighting. If I think it was like a monkey-like creature that has a subtext insect, and you were told that those are insects.
That one. I see.
They don't have a soul.
I understand. Oh, this monster. Yeah. Yep. All right. I was like thinking, insects. Is it like a waifu that looks down on you and wants
Oh no.
a waifu that looks down on you and just wants to step on you and then like, oh, you're beneath me, you're insect. Yeah, that's what I thought about. That's what I legit thought about. I'm sorry.
Not that kind of insect.
I understand.
Like, you know those trophy moments like you insect, don't you dare touch me, like something.
Yeah, you dog is the classic also.
Mm-hmm. Well, on that note, I think we'll have to wrap things up for today.
Yep.
Oh, it's that time already.
Yes, it's that time. I would like to extend my thanks for our glorious guest. Thank you, ASid, for coming on the show and sharing with us your take with the review and the Evenical games. Thank you once more from the bottom of my heart you decided to join us. And for all our listeners, thank you for listening and for giving feedback. We all try to incorporate that in. And for those who loved ASid, please, on the current screen, we have all the information to join and subscribe to him. And for now, thanks and goodbye.
See you next week.
There, gents.